Will be, well, I'll give you a background about the demographic and geographic distribution of people in Egypt. Then what's the concept of female terrorism, the definition that we will be using here, the factors that lead women and girls' involvement in violent extremism and terrorism in Egypt, and the suffrage of women from terrorism in Egypt, and what were the steps taken by the Egyptian government and the civil society in order to curb the phenomenon. Okay, just to give you a background, we're the most populous in the Arab world, Egypt. We're 91 million. And actually, when it comes to male versus female, it's almost 1-to-1. Maybe slightly male are slightly more than 1-to-1. The geographic distribution of people in Egypt, how they are geographically distributed. This is the map of Egypt. As you see, not all Egypt is populated. The population is concentrated on the Nile and the Suez Canal area and the north coast of the Mediterranean. So we have lots of ample areas that is not populated, and when we're talking about these areas not populated, we're also talking about unbalanced development, where all the development goes to the populated area. These areas that are less populated or least populated do not get or did not get the same attention from the government regarding development. We're trying to get over this now, but this is the fact. Okay, I'd also like to give you a background about the terrorist attacks that we've suffered from January 2017 till June. This does not include what happened, for instance, yesterday or the day before yesterday. These are the number of attacks. If you look at the geographic distribution, you will find the Kharja Oasis, which is not a populated area, but you will also find that the terrorist acts have targeted rural as well as urban area, has targeted Alexandria, which is south of the Mediterranean. That's why it's very important to stabilize Egypt, because it affects the north of the Mediterranean. It targeted Arish and Rafah, which we're talking about Sinai, and also it targeted parts of mainly churches, which is the new phenomena that we're seeing now in targeting Christians in Egypt from terrorist groups. So this is the attacks from from the 16th of January till the 1st of June.
How many people were killed?
I have the figures, not on the presentation, but I have the figures, and I have the male versus female. You can email me and I can send you the figures. Okay, what do we mean when I talk about female terrorists? Who will I be meaning by that? I'll be meaning either the women who carry out political act by supporting their male relatives. So here they are just supporting in terrorist acts, or those who share in the terrorist act itself, because we've seen attacks where women themselves have carried the attacks. Why do women get recruited in terrorist groups, or why do they become part of terrorist groups, or why do terrorist groups recruit women? One of the aspects, and I think Hoda have also mentioned this, is that they are far from suspicion. So they can move freely, they have the niqab, which is one thing I hope one day it will be abolished in Egypt, because you cannot see who is behind them. There is also the fact that they can be providing sexual services. Although this is very controversial, it has been always publicized in the media that women are taken to Daesh or to ISIS to provide sexual service, but there is also lots of narrative that proves that this is not the case, or this is not the main case, and it's just a propaganda. Another issue is promoting the ideology within the surrounding. Women, when she gets recruited, she can also make her children believe in the ideology, her surrounding, her sisters, and so on. Also, women, when they get recruited, they are active afterwards on the internet in recruiting new members. Also, in bringing up their children, we have a new generation for Daesh, and also women are good in fundraising. So these are the main aspects why, especially in Egypt. Okay, what are the reasons that make women get recruited? Why would Egyptian women join ISIS? Actually, the pull and push factor, many of them are common with male. There are distinguished factors for female especially, but also there are factors that male and female share in the pull and push factors that lead to making women being part of terrorism. Also, there are lots of misconceptions. So there is a misconception that it is the wrong understanding of religion. You would be surprised, many of those women or ISIS, when they recruit them, religion is not the main aspect. You would not find that they've read religion, they understand religion, but religion is used as a tool to reach the end to recruit them. So the aspect of religion here, it has a role of justification, but it is not why they get recruited. The religion is used to advance the political agenda, it's not the real aspect. So this is one conception I would like that is misunderstood. The other thing is poverty and ignorance. Many people think that women as well as men, because I told you there are aspects that are shared, that they get recruited because they are poor and they are ignorant. You'd be surprised. I teach in American University in Cairo. It's one of the most prestigious, very high fees, and one of my students told me that his friend has joined ISIS. So not all of them are poor. This is not to exclude that unbalanced development that poverty leads to sometimes, but not all of them are poor. Not all of them are ignorant. Some of them are very well educated, and some of data reflects that some of them come from wealthy background. However, we cannot eliminate completely the economic and the educational factor. Okay, as mentioned today, that there are pull factors, which is the terrorist groups offers or empowers an individual within the collective. I like what was said, that he was a zero and he became a hero. This is a real aspect. Also, another thing is that actually we had a phenomena of declining of the nationalist identity in Egypt pre the revolution of the 25th of January. Actually, I remember I was teaching once in the police academy, human rights, and at that time we had on the social media young people coming up with groups saying, Egypt is not my mother, Egypt is my stepmother. In our culture, the stepmother is the villain. So when we always say Egypt is Masr hiya ummi, Egypt is my mother. So when young people came in 2010 saying, Egypt is not my mother, Egypt is my stepmother, it means that they are losing their nationalistic identity and their feeling of pride. So when there was a vacuum, who will I identify with? I don't identify now with Egypt, so I need to identify with whoever. And this makes them an easy prey for terrorist groups to make them from a zero to a hero and makes their recruitment easier. Okay, so the search of identity and belonging and purpose. Another thing is family heritage. Some of these male and female, they come from families who they had an extremist ideology within a family. So they were brought up on this extremist ideology. They cannot leave the family heritage. So simply they follow their family heritage. This is common male and female pull and push factors. Okay, there are also personal grievances. Personal grievances associated with political, economic, social aspect, and part of it is from some Western actions that were taken and is highly publicized on TVs. We got used to pictures of blood. We got used of actions or of injustice that lots of it is blamed on the international community. This has affected, and for some people, or for some male and female, they are there to get these Western policies out of the international community. Also, the lack of balanced development is an aspect. Actually, during Mubarak's era, there was, and this is, we're talking about 30 years, there was a neglect of development of Upper Egypt and of parts of Sinai, where, and these groups, although there was parts of Sinai that have been developed due to tourism and so on, but the neglect of development, the lack of schools, the lack of hospitals, the lack of job opportunities, and you find on the other side those who will offer you or promise to offer you social justice and offer you a life. Okay, now, actually, women, some of them have joined, and I'll be explaining to you a case study of those who have joined, Egyptian women who have joined ISIS. But let's first discuss women's suffrage of terrorism in Egypt. In Egypt, we have been ruled by Muslim Brotherhood for 1 year. Actually, in Egypt, Muslim Brotherhood are labeled for terrorist actions and for being a terrorist group. So, the main fear, or one of the suffrage of women in Egypt from terrorism, was the fear that they would lose their rights that they have fought for. For instance, when Muslim Brotherhood ruled, they wanted to decrease the marriage age from 18 to, they said even from 13, they were willing. Women have fought to reach the Khula law. Khula law, where women have the right to divorce herself. She just returns the dowry she pays, which our friend in Jordan have explained what it is. And they also worked on trying to abolish this law, which was one of the gains for women's rights. Circumcision, which was criminalized during Mubarak's era, and women have worked very hard to criminalize it. They actually believed that, or Muslim Brotherhood believed that, and propagated in actually also for abolishing this law that criminalized circumcision. Also issues regarding child law, where actually divorced women had the right to have the children till the age of 15, and then the children are asked. Actually, they believe that children at the age of 7 should go to their fathers. So this is part of the women's suffrage. Also, on drafting the constitution, and I remember I was on the media when the Muslim Brotherhood were drafting the constitution, and I said the percentage of women in the committee drafting the constitution is humiliating, because the percentage of women available in this committee that was making the constitution of Egypt after the revolution was actually very limited, which proved that we will not be able to advance what we want. Also, the Muslim Brotherhood have abolished the 64 seats quota for women in the parliament. They removed the only women judge we had in the Supreme Court. They called for the decrease of the marriage age and the custody law and the Khula law, because they believed that it contradicted Sharia. So women under the Muslim Brotherhood feared the loss of their rights. Actually, also, the Muslim Brotherhood produced a statement condemning the UN Commission on the Status of Women Declaration entitled End of Violence Against Women, because from their understanding that this is also against the law. Another issue that women have suffered from during the Muslim Brotherhood era was systematic sexual harassment. Why would you go out of your home for riots? Your place is in your home. And my students used to tell me, who used to go for riots, is that, and that's how I could prove it was systematic. If they go for demonstrations, the men would just go and make a U around them. Then they make the girl fall on the ground, they take off her shoes and then their trousers, and someone would come and pretend that he is helping her and the other one is harassing her. And we have lots of YouTubes that demonstrates how we had systematic harassment for women who were getting out of demonstrations for fearing that they would lose their rights because of the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay. We had the 30th of June revolution, where women, or actually who led the revolution, were women, Christians, and old age. Christians because of the fear that this is becoming a Muslim country, we're moving towards Iran, where would Christians be foreigners there? We have 10% of Christians, and they used to own during Mubarak era 56% of the free economy. So simply, where would they be located? Also women, and to give you an example, my uncle's wife, she's 18 years old, she's Christian, I'm a Muslim, but she's Christian. She took a chair, 8 years old, sat on the street on this chair carrying the flag of Egypt. And because she said, this is my country. Even if the fear that they would become excluded was terrible, the fear of women becoming, so being a woman was one issue, being a Christian was another issue, being a secular, maybe Christians, they would pay the jizya, but secular like me had no place. Okay, so but that's why they went out, or they led the 30th of June revolution. After the 30th of June revolution, women were also victims of terrorism. Because what happened was that the terrorist groups, or Muslim Brotherhood, and when we had all the fight after the 30th of June, 5 minutes, okay. Simply attacks started to happen on policemen and on the military. Terrorist groups were targeting policemen and military. We have lots of widowers, and we have lots of orphans because simply their parents were targeted as policemen and officers. In addition to all the attacks that happens and resulted in okay. Now we go to Egypt, Egyptian female terrorists, and I'll just go quickly to share with you how one of the girls was recruited. Her name was Hannah. Hannah was recruited by a male through the internet. She's very well educated, and simply her role in Sinai, they recruit girls in Sinai, is to monitor the military movements and to give them the data about what's happening. And that's why the terrorist groups have been trying to recruit girls, especially from Sinai, because they are less suspicion from them. Okay. We don't have figures, unfortunately. So we don't have figures of women, Egyptian women being recruited, but from the little we have, they are in their 20s, and they are from Sinai, and they are well educated. Okay, what do we do to finish quickly? What do we do to work on this? What we do is simply we started to have women police officers, and we have around 600 now women police officers very well trained to confront sexual harassment. And now if you go into Cairo streets, places for those who come to Egypt, to Khan Khalili, or these areas, you feel very safe as a female. Sexual harassment was aborted to a great extent in Egypt. Another thing is the Ministry of Social Solidarity. Here I'm talking about government efforts, and after that talking about civil society efforts. The Ministry of Social Solidarity have been working on empowering poor women through a program called Takaful and Karama. Takaful, we got the money from the World Bank. If a woman is proved to be needy, she doesn't have an income, and with the condition that she puts, if she has kids, that she puts them into education, she gets a £1,000 in order to, so long as she continues the education of her children through a World Bank program called Takaful and Karam. There is also empowerment of women through giving priority to women by giving them loans for small and they are not small enterprises. So this is another kind. The government of Egypt is also trying to modify the religious discourse. We've seen the president coming out talking about the necessity of changing the religious discourse. But if you ask my judgment, I don't know about how my colleagues would believe about that. We don't know how to do it yet. We have the political will, but we don't have the innovative ideas like when we were discussing about Hidayat and so on, how to make it, how to reach to the community and to reach to, but there were changes in the school curriculums already, and there was an appeal to the Azhar. Azhar is the main religious university in Egypt to play a role. Also, there are strong potential and strong elements going in order to empower the national identity, to fill the gap of the lack of identity. So programs are done for youth, male and female. They meet on monthly basis with the president, and they take different trainings. There are lots of discussions about the choice of these youth, but there is at least there is a start. There is also other programs done on social media, trying to balance the social media or to counter the social media coming from the on civil society organizations are working on women, on youth, on empowerment. They are working on public awareness. They are working on scandalizing hatred speech, and also on raising public awareness about recruitment through social media sites. We have also the Women National Council, which is a quasi NGO that is working on empowering women pride. You should be proud to be a woman. We have females get ta'nis, which means it's like in French. So there is a program on you need to be proud that you are a woman, and they keep discussing why women should be proud and the role of women and the importance of the role of women in the society. This is all. Can we beat terrorism? This is a very important question. Male and female, not only female, although we're targeting the issue of female here. But can we beat it? This is an important question. Can we beat women in involvement in terrorism? All what we mentioned as trying to solve the problem, is it enough, or do we need outside ideas outside the box? How can we reach to those who live in slums? By the way, one of the programs, for instance, there is a program to eliminate slums. And already many of those living in slums have been moved now to places where there is decent housing, there is bookshops, libraries, etc., to offer them a decent way of life. Okay, we can do it, but we can do it together. The military action is important on the first level, but this is the first level, but also eliminating the causes of terrorism, for the causes that make people join terrorist groups, eliminating the grievances, the empowering the national identity. We need to be working on that. Thank you very much. We've done this, Anissa, Mariana, and myself, and I don't know if we know questions.
Just to add something?
Yes.
Am I allowed to add something?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Noha has done a great job, and she covered everything, and Marianne, being modest as usual, has given her talking about the subject to us. So I just want to say something based on my personal experience, first-hand experience, because I was in Tahrir Square on the 26th of January. Then I was funding for the 30th of June revolution. When my daughter told me over the phone that we have to come back from vacation early one day because me and my friends are going to demonstrate on the 25th of January because this is the police day. And I said, what is this? You're gonna go there and you're not gonna find anyone there. And you'll call me and say, Mommy, come and pick me up. She said no, and mind you, she is a graduate of German school in Cairo, a graduate of the American University in Cairo, so her friends are the same category. So they're not suffering of something, but they decided that they want to go against police brutality. And that was the aim. Not changing the president, nothing like that. it was the aim as protesting against the Ministry of Police Security or whatever. So when she went, by the afternoon, there are about 250,000 in the street, and she said, I'm surrounded with people, we arrived at Tahrir Square. And it started there because of the mismanagement of the government, of the situation. They thought this is going to go after a day. So it continued. We all went to the street, me and my other daughter, and it started there. What I want to say about women in this, first, the role of women in the Muslim Brotherhood has started since the 30s of the last century. They always had a role. Zainab al-Ghazali and others, very famous women that had recruited others and has provided funding. So they had a role since a very long time. The second thing, we have to admit that there are on my page as a member of parliament, lots of people, whenever they feel frustrated, they sympathize with the Brotherhood and they start, saying bad words on the page and things like that. So there is some sympathizers with them. The point of identity is very important because when the Muslim Brotherhood were there in the first parliament, and Marianne attended that, and when Morsi was elected as a president, the slogan was that you shouldn't be proud of being an Egyptian, you're a Muslim that affiliates with every Muslim in the whole world. And there is a famous saying by the Murshid who said, if a Filipino or an Indonesian or anyone who's a Muslim, then I accept him as the president of Egypt. So there was a systematic abolishment of feeling that you're proud, you're the Egyptian with the pharaohs, because they look at the pharaohs and the statues. At that time, they were talking publicly in television, them and the Salafists, about destroying the statues, like what happened in Afghanistan by Taliban.
And the pyramids.
Yeah, and the pyramids. And they say these are bad things and bad influence on people. And we all fighted that in the street, saying that we're not accepting that. The other thing is the Salafists. The Salafists now are in the parliament with us. We have 12 Salafists from Al-Noor party. They act as being secular, but you notice sometimes when the national
They don't stand for it.
they don't stand for it. And we watch them for not doing that because they don't believe in that. The second thing, when I presented something about women's rights, and they have reservations on that, and they believe that this is enough for women, they worry about that. And to tell you the truth, most men in the whole world, let's be frank, they feel that women has already gone too far and they have everything, so why do they ask for more? But the Salafists, when this year, for the first time in history, a lady was appointed as a governor of one of the governments in Egypt, they came on TV, and I was with the man on TV, and I said, we don't accept that. No wilaya in Islam for a woman over a man. And we discussed this very fiercely, and people made interventions over television, and he was totally convinced that a woman should not be appointed as such. Of course, no women should be presidents or vice presidents, whatever. I remember talking to one of the Salafists that were in the last parliament, and I said, but if your wife would like to come inside the parliament and be a member of parliament, he said, I know her opinion. I express her opinion in the parliament. Why does she need to come?
And I also tell her how to vote.
Yes, this is a deep root thinking in the Salafist thinking. And on the opposite side, the women were standing in queues for the presidential and parliament elections, and they were more than men, standing for hours. I remember we're standing and talking to our colleagues for hours to vote, and to get them down. The last thing I want to do is combating terrorism or being victorious. The point is, we don't have a choice. There is no other options. We have to defeat that because this is against humanity. It's not just against women, this is against humanity, this type of thinking. But we have to admit that sometimes poverty and very hard economic conditions. They drive people to be radicals, you know, or they don't believe in what's happening. They don't believe in the things that as Noha said, for them, Christians, being Muslims, Christians are better because they are an enemy they can see. But us, as Muslims, not you know, with a veil and not sitting at home. And I remember there was a woman that her picture was put in Washington Post, something like that, that they have someone teared her dress and her underwear was evident on TVs. And I remember the Murshid and the Ikhwan said, what made her go there? So they blamed her for demonstrating, not so. So the Salafists are dangerous as well as Iran. The last thing is the religious speech. The president has talked frequently, saying that the religious speech should be modified, more tolerant. And I believe the curricula in schools should be also modified. We have a new Minister of Education that I think he's a very liberal man, and I think he's going to change. But if Al-Azhar does not stand for that, and we have quarrels with Al-Azhar all the time, that they should modify what they say. That's it. I just wanted to
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Noah and Anissa. So we
And Mariam.
give the floor to the next group, which is
تعالي بقى يا مريم.
خلاص